And good morning, grandchildren. Well, I'm going to start you off with the very first Curious George book I ever had read to me. When I was a little boy, I would sit in my mother's lap and she would read this Curious George book to me. She read it to me so many times. She said that before I could ever read, she would flip open a page and I would quote the page exactly. That's pretty sad commentary on what Grandpapa was learning through the years, isn't it? Well, here it is, Curious George by H.A. Ray, the original. All right, let's check this book out then. Curious George. There he finds the man in the yellow hat's yellow hat. It's not yellow in this book, is it? This is George. He lived in Africa. He was very happy, but he had one fault. He was too curious. Look at him, swinging away in that banana tree. One day, George saw a man. He had a large yellow straw hat. The man saw George too. What a nice little monkey, he thought. I would like to take that monkey home with me. The man put his hat on the ground, and of course George was curious. He came down from the tree to look at the large yellow hat. So there it is, the man in the yellow hat, even though his hat's not yellow in this book, because this is kind of an old book. There's Curious George. So he sets a trap for him. He puts something down there that will make George curious. He puts that hat on the ground, and George wants to come and see about that. The man with the big yellow hat, oops, wait, that's the wrong one. The hat had been on the man's head. George thought it would be nice to have it on his own head. He picked it up and put it on. Here it is. There's the hat. He says, this will be interesting. He picked it up and he put it on. Uh-oh, what happened? The hat covered George's head. He couldn't see. Look at that. Oh no, poor George. The man picked him up quickly and popped him into a bag. George was caught. Poor George. Oh well. So basically the man kidnapped the poor little monkey. The man with the big yellow hat put George into a little boat, and the sailor rowed them both across the water to a big ship. George was sad, but he was still a little curious. Did you ever know this about the history of George? I bet you didn't. On the big ship, things began to happen. The man took off the bag. George sat on a little stool, and the man said, George, I'm going to take you to a big zoo in a big city. You will like it there. Now run along and play, and don't get into trouble. George promised to be good, because obviously he's a tame monkey. But it's easy for little monkeys to forget. So here he is. He's with the man. Here he is smoking his pipe on this ship. There's all sorts of stuff, and the monkey's like, I'll be good. We'll find out if he'll be good. On the deck, he found some seagulls. He wondered how they could fly. He was very curious. Finally, he had to try. It looked easy. See the seagull flying? And he thought he needed to try. It looked easy, but first this, and then this. Oh no. Uh-oh, he's in the water. Where is George? The sailors looked and looked. At last they saw him struggling in the water, and he was almost tired out. Look at him, they can't find George anywhere. There he is, swimming under the water. Poor George. Man overboard, actually monkey overboard, the sailors cried, and they threw him a life belt. George caught it and held on. At last he was safe on board. It's actually called a life ring, but that's okay. And here they are, shaking him and making him throw up all the fish and the water that was in his mouth and his belly. Wow, there's another guy smoking a pipe. Interesting. Bunch of pipe smoking sailors. After that, George was more careful to be a good monkey until at last the long trip was over. George said goodbye to the kind sailors, and he walked with the man with the yellow hat off the ship to the shore and on to into the city and to the man's house. So here they are, they're leaving now, and everybody's telling them goodbye, and George is walking off just like no big deal. Man, he was a tame little monkey. Oh, I see a kitty cat. I remember that little kitty cat in my old books. After a good meal and a good pipe, George felt very tired. So here's the good meal. Here's the good pipe. George felt very tired. Now we'll have you know, in the new Curious George book, he doesn't smoke a pipe. Interesting, huh? Very interesting. He crawled into bed and he fell fast asleep. There he is, his little bag, his slippers, and something. Sound asleep. Next morning, the man telephoned the zoo. George watched him. He was fascinated. Then the man went away. George was curious. He wanted to telephone too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What fun. Now, back in the day, this was the type of telephone that you used. It had a rotary dial. You'd stick your finger in a hole and you would turn the dial like that. It would go tick, 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 tick. You'd turn the dial and go tick, 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 tick. And that's how you dialed the phone number. Yeah, you'd call somebody. It was connected with a wire to the wall. Ding-a-ling-a-ling, George had telephoned the fire station. The firemen rushed to the telephone. Hello, hello, they said, but there was no answer. Then they looked for the signal on the big map that showed where the telephone call had come from. They didn't know it was George. They thought it was a real fire. See, telephones used to hang on the wall like that. And they had a way to spot where the call was coming from. Beep, beep, beep. It's telling them right there where George was at. Hurry, hurry, hurry. The firemen jumped to the fire engines and onto the hook and ladders. Ding dong, ding dong. Everyone out of the way. Hurry, hurry, hurry. The firemen are rushing. Look at them. There's this. Look at that big ladder truck. Wow, they are flying down the road. The firemen rushed into the house. They opened the door. No fire, only a naughty little monkey. Ah! George playing with the phone. Oh, catch him, they cried. George tried to run away. He almost did, but he got caught in the telephone wire. Look at him chasing him. He got caught in the telephone wire, and a thin fireman caught one arm, and a fat fireman caught the other arm. You fooled the fire department, they said. We will have to shut you up where you can't do any more harm. Justice. They took him away and shut him up in prison. So there's the fat fireman and the thin fireman. And this is where they put him, in a prison cell with rats. This is what you do when you break the law. This is what they do. They put you in a jail with rats. George wanted to get out. He climbed up to the windows and he tried the bar. Just then the watchman came in. He got on a wooden bed to catch George, but the watchman was too big and heavy. The bed tipped over and the watchman fell off. And quick as lightning, George ran out through the open door. There he is trying to catch George. You come down from here. The bed flips over and hits him, and out goes George. Look at him, running like a scared monkey. He hurried along through the building and out on the roof, and then he was lucky to be a monkey. Once out on the telephone wires, he walked on them like a tightrope. Quickly and quietly over the guard's head, George walked away. He was free. Look at that. And there's that cat again. There's the guard down there. They don't see him walking on the telephone wires. Tricky monkey. Down the street, outside the prison wall, stood a balloon man. A little girl bought a balloon for her brother. George watched. He was curious again. He felt he must have a bright red balloon. He reached over and tried to help himself. So there's the little girl buying the little boy a balloon, and George wants one of those red ones. I'm afraid there's gonna be trouble. Instead of one balloon, the whole bunch broke loose. In an instant, the wind whisked them all away, and with them went George, holding tight with both hands. Look at that. He's being carried away by the wind. Oh my, look at the people down below. No! Up he sailed, higher and higher. The houses looked like toy houses. The people looked like dolls. George was frightened. He held on very tight. Look how high up he is. Look at the people, how tiny they are. Little bitty people, because he's so high up in the air, holding onto those balloons tight. Wow. At first, the wind blew in great gusts. Then it quieted. Finally, it stopped blowing altogether. George was very tired. Down, down he went, boom, onto the top of a traffic light. Everyone was surprised. The traffic got all mixed up. George didn't know what to do, and then he heard someone call, "George!" He looked down and he saw his friend, the man with the big yellow hat. Look at that. George landed on top of a traffic light. Talk about confusion. Do you see the man in the yellow hat? Of course, the hat's not yellow, remember. This is an odd book. I see him. Right there. Even the car looks like it's looking up at him. See how the cars look like they're looking? Everybody's checking out the monkey on top of the light pole. George. George is very happy. The man was happy too. George slid down the post and the man with the big yellow hat put him under his arm. Then he paid the balloon man for all the balloons. And then George and the man climbed in the car, and at last they went away. So there's the man squaring up, or the man with the yellow hat squaring up with the man with the balloons, paying him for those. And there they go, tearing off in the car. They headed off to the zoo. What a nice place for George to live. And there he is. He moved into the zoo and he gave every animal in the park a balloon. What a nice monkey. So that's how George ended up out of the jungle. So, oh, what in the world is that? Are you kidding me? There is a turtle holding a balloon. Look at the turtle down here. Look at that, right there, a turtle holding a balloon. Who would ever imagine? Well, that's it. That's the story of how Curious George started. Didn't start off too good, did he? I love you, grandchildren.